Every day, you step into a psychological battlefield. You cross paths with people who project their internal chaos onto you. They use words as weapons, insults as traps, and disrespect as a tool to destabilize your mind. The natural, human instinct is to strike back. We want to crush the offender with a sharper insult, a louder tone, or a display of dominant outrage. We think that by proving them wrong, or calling them out, we win. But this is a profound psychological illusion. The moment you react, you lose. The smartest way to handle a rude person is not what you think. Stoic philosophy and modern behavioral psychology reveal a much deeper, more devastating truth. Silence, when executed with deliberate intention, destroys rudeness better than any clever comeback ever could. It leaves the aggressor entirely speechless, strips them of their power, and hands the ultimate control over the environment back to you. To understand why this works, we must first analyze the hidden architecture of rudeness. What is actually happening when someone attacks your character, diminishes your work, or treats you with blatant disrespect? Psychologically, rude people are not driven by strength. They are driven by an underlying deficit. They suffer from an internal insecurity, a desperate need for control, or a toxic desire to feel superior by rendering someone else inferior. When an individual hurls an insult or behaves maliciously, they are launching a psychological projection. They are attempting to transfer their inner friction onto you. Crucially, this dynamic requires a transaction. An insult cannot function without a recipient who accepts its weight. When someone is rude to you, they are expecting a reaction. In fact, they are starving for it. They want you emotional. They want you defensive. They want you visibly rattled, flustered, or angry. That reaction is their psychological reward. It feeds their ego and confirms that they have successfully manipulated your internal state. It proves to them that they possess the keys to your peace of mind. By reacting, you grant them total dominance over your emotional landscape. You become their puppet, dancing to the rhythm of their toxicity. The ancient Stoics understood this trap perfectly, thousands of years before modern psychology could codify it. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and one of the ultimate pillars of Stoic thought, wrote a profound truth in his private journals. He noted that the best revenge is to not be like your enemy. Think about the immense wisdom embedded in that single sentence. When you match someone's rudeness with your own anger, you become exactly what you claim to despise. You adopt their low frequency, their lack of control, and their emotional instability. You validate their behavior by participating in it. You give them exactly what they want: engagement. So what do you do instead when confronted with hostility? You shift the paradigm entirely. You employ a strategy that shatters their expectations and collapses their psychological offense. First, you pause. You do not speak. You do not shift your posture defensively. You do not cross your arms or scoff. You simply look at them with calm, unblinking clarity. You let the silence hang heavily in the air, like thick, suffocating smoke. You offer no anger, no panic, and absolutely no explanation. You stand anchored in complete composure. Let us examine how this unfolds in a real-world scenario. Imagine a corporate boardroom, a meeting room, or a social gathering. A colleague or an acquaintance decides to insult your work or attack your intelligence directly in front of others. It is a calculated power move designed to humiliate you. Immediately, the atmosphere in the room shifts. The tension spikes. Everyone stops talking, holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable fireworks. They are waiting for you to snap back, to get defensive, or to unravel under the pressure. The aggressor is leaning forward, ready to feast on your emotional distress. Instead of playing the role they scripted for you, you execute the Stoic pause. You look them in the eye. You hold their gaze for 2, 3, or 4 seconds of absolute stillness. Then, with a tone of voice as level and calm as a frozen lake, you say a simple phrase. Interesting perspective. And then, without pausing for their reply, you seamlessly continue with your day, your presentation, or your conversation as if absolutely nothing happened. Consider what just occurred in that psychological exchange. You completely refused to give them power. You denied them the psychological fuel they require to survive. Rude people need engagement to feel superior. They need you to fight back so they can justify their own aggression. When you deny them that fuel, their entire offensive strategy collapses inward. Suddenly, because you did not absorb the toxicity, the insult does not land on you. It remains suspended in the air, attaching itself solely to the person who threw it. Because you did not react, they become the awkward one. The entire social pressure of the room instantly shifts away from you and onto them. The onlookers do not see a defeated victim. They see an unshakable, powerful individual and a desperate, childish agitator. The aggressor is left standing in the vacuum of their own making, utterly exposed and deeply embarrassed. The legendary philosopher Seneca famously declared that the greatest remedy for anger is delay. That deliberate delay is your ultimate weapon. It creates a critical buffer zone between the external stimulus and your internal response. Most people operate on a primitive loop of stimulus and automatic reaction. Someone pokes them, and they bark. Someone insults them, and they bite. This is not strength. It is slavery. It is the behavior of a well-trained animal responding to a whistle. Stoicism demands that you break this loop. The delay allows you to step back from your raw emotions, observe them objectively, and choose a rational course of action rather than an impulsive reaction. It gives you the space to realize that the person standing before you is acting out of ignorance, weakness, or pain. Their words have no objective power to harm you unless you allow your mind to interpret them as harmful. Now, let us clarify a critical point. This masterclass in silence does not mean you accept disrespect. It does not mean you become a passive doormat for others to step on. There is a vast, unbridgeable chasm between passive submission and Stoic mastery. Passive submission comes from a place of fear, cowardice, and helplessness. You stay silent because you are afraid of conflict, and your internal state remains deeply troubled, anxious, and wounded. Stoic mastery, however, comes from a position of absolute abundance, strength, and internal sovereignty. You choose how to respond, not react. You recognize that the most cutting, brutal response you can ever deliver to an insecure bully is no response at all. You choose not to respond because their words simply do not deserve your energy. Energy is a finite, hyper-precious resource. Why would you spend it on someone who does not matter to your life or your purpose? If you buy into their drama, you are essentially purchasing their garbage. You must protect your internal peace like it is pure gold. It is the most valuable asset you own. Do not hand it over to a random stranger, a bitter coworker, or a toxic family member for the low price of a petty insult. When you master the art of intentional silence, you begin to see the world through a radically different lens. You realize that a person who stays calm, collected, and completely unbothered in the absolute face of rudeness displays far more raw strength than 100 clever insults ever could. True power is not about being loud. It is not about having the final word or winning an argument. True power is the absolute mastery over your own mind. It is the ability to remain completely unmoved while the storm rages all around you. Let us look deeper into the psychological state of the rude person when confronted by this absolute composure. When a malicious individual strikes out at you and encounters a wall of calm silence, it triggers a profound cognitive dissonance within their brain. Their mind expects a specific sequence of events. Action leads to reaction. When the reaction fails to materialize, their internal script breaks down completely. They are forced to confront the emptiness of their own behavior. The silence acts as a mirror, reflecting their own ugliness, insecurity, and lack of self-control straight back into their face. It is a deeply uncomfortable experience that leaves them feeling small, exposed, and entirely speechless. This approach requires an exceptional level of discipline. It is easy to blow up. It is easy to let your ego take the wheel and scream at someone. Anyone can do that. The weakest, most undisciplined people on earth do that every single day. But to stand face to face with disrespect, to feel the initial flash of heat in your chest, and to consciously choose to stay completely still, cool, and silent, that requires the heart of a warrior. That requires the mind of a philosopher. To implement this effectively in your life, you must train your mind to reframe every instance of rudeness as a test. The next time someone cuts you off in traffic, speaks to you with condescension, or insults your character, do not view it as a personal tragedy. View it as a practical examination designed to test your Stoic virtue. Look at the rude person not as an enemy, but as an unwitting personal trainer for your mind. They are providing you with a golden opportunity to practice patience, resilience, and self-mastery. They are helping you build emotional muscle. When you adopt this psychological mindset, the game changes completely. You no longer feel victimized by other people's bad behavior. Instead, you feel a sense of quiet amusement. You watch them exhaust themselves, throwing emotional punches that completely miss the mark and hit nothing but empty air. You watch them unravel, while you remain perfectly intact. You realize that their rudeness has absolutely nothing to do with you, and everything to do with their own internal suffering. Remember, you cannot control how other people act. You cannot control what they say, how they treat you, or how toxic they choose to be. The world is full of chaotic, undisciplined elements that are completely outside of your sphere of influence. Trying to control or change them is a fool's errand that will only lead to perpetual frustration, exhaustion, and despair. But you possess absolute, total control over how you choose to process their behavior. You control your thoughts, your judgments, your breathing, and your actions. That is your true domain. That is where your power resides. Epictetus, another titan of Stoic philosophy, taught that men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. An insult is just sound waves moving through the air. It is nothing more than vibration. It cannot penetrate your skin, it cannot alter your biology, and it cannot diminish your inherent worth unless you consciously choose to adopt it, dwell on it, and let it hurt you. The next time you find yourself entering an interaction with a rude person, lean heavily into the majesty of silence. Do not engage in their petty power struggles. Do not try to win their games. Defeat them by refusing to play entirely. Look at them calmly. Let the silence settle. Hold on to your absolute composure and guard your peace with unyielding strength. Watch how quickly their false confidence evaporates. Watch how their words lose all momentum and fall uselessly to the ground. Watch how they collapse inward, left entirely speechless by the immense, quiet power of a mind that simply refuses to be conquered. This is the path of the Stoic. This is the path of ultimate psychological resilience. It is a quiet, steady, and unshakable way of navigating a chaotic world. By mastering your reaction, you take back your autonomy, elevate your character, and demonstrate a profound level of emotional maturity. Let your composure be your shield. Let your silence be your final statement. Stand firm, stay grounded, and never allow the weakness of another person to dictate the magnificent strength of your own mind.